Here we are. Another month has flown by. Holy bananas. And we're going to talk about all the books I read this month. The first book we read was If You Can't Take the Heat by Geraldine DeRuyter. It is a nonfiction book about food, fury, and feminism. It is humorous and emotional and just a fantastic read, and I feel like I've talked about this book so extensively. I have a standalone review for it. I will link that down below if you want to check it out. It's just a great read. One of my favorite nonfiction books I have read so far this year. Right now, top contender for #1 spot. So, like I said, link down below if you want to check that out. The next book I read was Forgotten Sisters by Cynthia Palaio. And this is a strange haunting of sorts. It's about these two sisters who live along the river in Chicago. There are all these bodies that keep being found in the river, and they're of men. It's part police procedural, and it's part really weird haunting, and there's a lot of history about the haunting and the house that these two sisters live in, and then like the family that was there before them and the two sisters that lived there before them too. Almost has like weird like you're kind of like in a fog while reading it because it's so strange and out there. If you like strange hauntings, you might just like Forgotten Sisters by Cynthia Palaio. After that, I read Island Witch by Amanda Giatisa, and this is a story about this family. The father is what they call a demon priest, which is, I believe it's called a kapua. The daughter, Amara, she is basically apprenticing to follow in his footsteps to do what he does, and he's like a medicine man. Maybe demon priest sounds a little scary. He's a medicine man. He heals the sick, he blesses houses, if someone's possessed by some sort of spirit, he does exorcisms. But this is when colonialization has come to their island, and so a lot of these people are being converted to Christianity. At this point in time, there's been several men who have been attacked in the jungle, and they're blaming the dad because he's a demon priest. So they're like, this is all your fault, da 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 da, because of your devilish ways and all that. And so at this point, Amara too, her father all of a sudden is like, hey, you're gonna just learn to be a seamstress from your mother. And he doesn't want to teach her anything anymore. And she doesn't know why it's so abrupt. Maybe it has to do with some of these attacks in the jungle, but she's not sure. But then she also remembers being really sick and hearing weird stuff. And after she was not sick anymore, her dad didn't want to help her. He won't even look at her, and he's being really weird and effed up, and stuff's really crazy and strange. Fantastic read. It's weird. It's witchy. You get the fury of a woman who is wronged, and what that unleashes. And it's a fantastic story. Loved it. After that, we read Josh Malerman's newest, Incidents Around the House, and it follows the story of Bella and her parents, Mommy, Daddo, and Other Mommy. Well, Other Mommy comes out of the closet, and Other Mommy has a question for Bella. She wants to know if she can come into Bella's heart for carnations. Now, why would she want these stupid flowers? Well, Bella's a little girl, so she doesn't know what she's saying. Other Mommy wants reincarnation. Basically, she wants to possess Bella so she can come back and stop being this weird, creepy closet ghost. And Other Mommy at first, like, Bella's not afraid of her, but Other Mommy gets more and more intense because she wants those carnations, dang it. And eventually other people start seeing Other Mommy, and it's terrifying. Sometimes Other Mommy's face is on the side of her face, and sometimes she's really, really giant. And so they decide they're gonna get out of the house and run away from her, but Other Mommy just keeps coming. And it's like the anxiety builds. It's such a weird, strange haunting. I really liked it. It's told from the perspective of a child. So you see how some of the stuff that the kid would at first not think was scary, but then not understand how stuff is meant and this, that, and the other. And it's a wild story. And maybe not everyone wants to read a story from the perspective of what, I don't think they ever say how old the kid is. In my brain, I imagine she's around 8. Old enough to be in school, but not super old to really have a grasp on everything that's going on, or what adults mean when they say stuff and all that. And I thought it was a pretty great read. That comes out June 25th, I think. And I know Josh is going to do an event for it. He's going to do a reading. He is from the state of Michigan where I live, so typically he does a reading for his new books. So I'm kind of stoked for that, and I can't wait for that to happen. So that should be a good time. After that, I read this short little novella, The Woods All Black by Lee Mandello. It is a trans horror romance. It's gritty, it's furious, it's so freaking good. I liked it a lot. It takes place back in the day in this tiny little town that has, I guess, sort of a religious fervor that's been swept over it by this pastor guy who sucks butt. I mean, he doesn't suck butt, he just sucks. Anyway, so this nurse comes to town. The town council voted to have a nurse come to town to take care of people, but they get to town and the pastor's all like, oh, well, what do we need a nurse to deliver babies for? We should just leave it all up to God. If, if God takes them, oh well, blah, blah, bitty bloob. The nurse is like, why did they even bother calling me here? Like, what is my purpose to be here if they don't want one? Like, why did they vote on this? What the F? And so the nurse is trans. The townsfolk all call them a she, but she identifies as a he. And so he meets this other kid that's in town named Stevie. Stevie is originally Stephanie, but the townsfolk are all like, oh, she's got the devil in her, and this nurse, it's the nurse's fault that this is happening to her, and they try to blame the nurse, and I'm not describing this very well right now. Bunch of hateful religious folk being, horrible as usual, and Preacher Man gets his in the end, and it's great, and I really enjoyed it. After that one, I read the second book in the Dark Tower series, The Drawing of Three, and as a lot of people said, it is definitely better than the first one. I still thought the first one was good. Set the stage really nicely, leads into it. The Drawing of Three is freaking wild. And it gets weirder and wilder with each doorway that Roland, the gunslinger, goes through. And the weird lobstrosities that are those crazy monsters on the beach, those are terrifying. I'm gonna live in my nightmares for quite some time. So, Roland's continuing on his journey. He wakes up to being like way too close to the water. The tide's coming in and it's gonna get his bullets all wet, rendering them not very useful, and then he's gonna be effed if that is the case. And all of a sudden he hears this weird dida-chum, dada-chum, dida-chum, dada-chum, and these weird lobster creatures that are like huge come out of the water. And one comes after him and takes a couple fingers and a toe and eats him. Roland escapes, otherwise we wouldn't have more books in the series, and continues his journey, like dragging himself to the next destination, which is the first door for The Drawing of Three. And it's such a crazy book. I have a standalone review for that I will link down below if you want to hear more about that. Any of the standalones I have, that if any of the books I talk about that I did a standalone review, I will link all those down below in the description of the video, so feel free to peruse if you want. So after that one, we read A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. This is the one I was yelling about, stepmom porn. It has Norse mythology woven throughout it. There's this woman, Freya. She had a really horrible husband. I mean, super POS. Selfish, evil, abusive sack of crap. She has a secret. She is a shield maiden, which normally wouldn't be a big deal, except for there's this whole prophecy about whoever controls the fate of the shield maiden will become a king and unite the kingdoms and blah, 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 blah. So everybody wants to be king. Anyways, her husband finds out about her secret, sells her off like freaking cattle to this Jarl Snorri, because Snorri wants to be king. Snorri, he's already married to this other woman, and he has a son named Bjorn. And she had actually seen and met Bjorn before the Jarl, and she was already having like lewd and lusty thoughts after him. But then all of a sudden she finds herself being married off to this Jarl because of this prophecy, da-da-da-da-da, and Bjorn is now her stepson. Hence me calling it stepmom porn. So it's not as bad as I thought it would be. And the book's not bad at all. I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Some of the smut, I thought the wording was a little cringy. But outside of that, I really liked the story. I liked the characters. I liked the lore that was in it. And I thought it was a good time. There will be a standalone review of that coming, so keep an eye out for that one. I don't know. If anyone else has read it, has any thoughts on it, let me know down in the comments what you thought of it. After that one, I read Moon of the Turning Leaves by Wabgishing Rice. And this is apparently the sequel, which I didn't know before I read it, to Moon of the Crusted Snow, I think. Yes, it is Moon of the Crusted Snow, which I didn't read. If you hadn't told me it was a sequel, I would never have known. So I may go back and read the first one. Sometimes I do stuff backwards. That's just how I work. I don't know. And I found this out and I was like, I'm still gonna read it. Sometimes I won't, but it depends. You know, if there was like 3 or 4 books in the series, I probably wouldn't have read the second book first. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really liked the writing. It was very emotional and it was a very beautifully written book. It takes place in this like post-apocalyptic landscape. The Anishinaabe people, they have lived in this spot for a while. Like when all of the crap hit the fan, they went back to living off the land and fishing and hunting and just living out in the wild away from everyone. And at this point in time, they don't know if there's any other people out there that still exist or alive. So they send out a party. They go out and they're gonna go and try to get to where they used to live before, the land by the big waters where the birch trees grow. And on the way, they come across other people, some good, some bad, some really crappy stuff happens, some good stuff happens, and just beautifully written. And the ending, oh, it's very heartfelt, made me cry. It was really good. I would highly recommend it. Maybe read the first book first and don't be like me and read the second one first. After that one, we read Rainbow Black by Maggie Thrash. This is a book. It was about the Satanic Panic. It was in 1983, and there's this family, 2 daughters, Lacey and Eclair, and the parents. And the parents run this rainbow daycare, and they're kind of hippy-dippy. And at some point, there's this one girl who accuses the dad of, like, molesting her. In reality, it had been her dad that was molesting her, but she didn't want to say that, or it was too painful, so she accuses the dad. And then all these other kids, they have, like, this therapist basically, like, suggest and lead them on to say what they want them to say. So the kids, you know, would respond at first, but then the kids were feeling like their answers weren't good enough, so they would then just like make up a bunch of lies. And then a lot of the stuff, they were like, this happened on da-da-da-da-da on the property, and like the police and whatever went to look for all this evidence that none of it really existed, and they were trying to get the daughter, Lacey, to say that there was abuse going on, because some of the kids would say Lacey was there, and it was all effed up. So there's this whole spectacle of it. Parents go to jail because of all this BS. Lacey just tries to get away from all of this. Later in life, she's moved away, but then all this crap gets dug back up again, and she has to relive a bunch of stuff and all this stuff from the past. And it's a wild read. I really enjoyed it. It's fast-paced, it's dark, it's a thriller kind of horror, just really great read. And I will have a standalone review for that one coming in the future, so keep an eye out for that one as well. Okay, so after that, I read an anthology of Indigenous dark fiction. And this is one of the best short story collections I've read in a long time. Like, a lot of times I'll read short stories, and I like a good chunk of them. But I never really love all of them, or it's always like kind of half and half. Like, some are really great and some are just okay. This one, I felt like almost all the stories were just awesome. And then the few that I didn't think were awesome, I thought were good. You have dark stories, some horrific stories, some heartfelt ones, some emotional ones, just a great, fantastic mix. There was only a handful of authors I had read before. One of them was the book I just mentioned. Wabgishing Rice also has a short story in there. The foreword's done by Stephen Graham Jones. Nick Medina has a story, and Tommy Orange. Those are the other authors that I had heard of. And then there's a ton of other ones who I hadn't heard of before that I will definitely be keeping an eye out to see what they're doing and possibly get some of their books if they have books or other writing that they've done. Beautiful cover. Love it. It's so good. There's 26 stories, and they're each just haunting and strange and dark and eerie. And I would highly recommend it. If you like videos where I talk about multiple things that I am reading or have read, the next video coming up will be about that. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.